December 2017. Inside Volkswagen Group's headquarters in Wolfsburg, Germany, executives were preparing to make one of the most controversial decisions in automotive history. Dieselgate had cost the company $33 billion in fines and settlements. The board needed cash. On the table was a proposal that would have been unthinkable just 3 years earlier: sell Ducati. The Italian motorcycle brand had been part of the VW family since 2012, owned through the Audi subsidiary. And now, with sharks circling, some of the biggest names in motorcycling smelled blood. Harley-Davidson hired Goldman Sachs and prepared a bid worth €1.5 billion. Royal Enfield's parent company, Eicher Motors, came close to matching the asking price. Bajaj Auto, Benetton, even the private equity firm that had previously owned Ducati, they all wanted a piece. For 11 months, the bidding war played out in boardrooms across 3 continents. Then, on December 14, 2017, something unexpected happened. VW's supervisory board met to make a final decision. When the vote came, the company's works council, the powerful labor representatives who hold seats on German corporate boards, blocked the sale. The works council's position was clear: Ducati was profitable, strategically valuable, and should not be sacrificed to pay for a diesel scandal that had nothing to do with motorcycles. Reports at the time described Ducati as a jewel that VW would be foolish to let go. The sale was dead. What happened next would transform Ducati from a beloved but troubled Italian icon into a billion-euro powerhouse. But to understand why the Works Council fought so hard to keep Ducati, and why that decision paid off beyond anyone's expectations, we need to go back, way back. Bologna, Italy, July 4th, 1926. In a small workshop, 3 brothers named Adriano, Bruno, and Marcello Ducati founded a company. They were not building motorcycles, they were building radio components, condensers, coils, the guts of early wireless technology. The company grew quickly. By 1935, they had constructed a massive factory in the Borgo Panigale district of Bologna. That factory still stands today. It is still where every Ducati is assembled. But World War II nearly ended everything. In 1944, Allied bombing raids destroyed the Borgo Panigale facility. The Ducati brothers had to rebuild from rubble. When production resumed after the war, Italy was in crisis. The country needed cheap transportation, and Ducati found an opportunity in a small auxiliary engine called the Cucciolo, a 48 cubic centimeter motor designed to clip onto a bicycle frame. That modest little engine sold hundreds of thousands of units, and it planted a seed. By the late 1950s, Ducati had pivoted entirely to motorcycles. But here's where the story gets interesting. In 1954, a young engineer named Fabio Taglioni joined Ducati. He would spend the next 35 years there, and his innovations would define everything the brand stands for today. Taglioni developed 2 technologies that became Ducati's DNA. First, the L-twin engine configuration, where 2 cylinders sit at a 90-degree angle. That layout gives Ducati motorcycles their distinctive sound, that thumping rumble that enthusiasts can identify from blocks away. Second, and more importantly, Taglioni perfected the desmodromic valve system. In a normal engine, springs push valves closed. But at high revolutions per minute, springs can float, failing to close valves fast enough. Desmodromic systems use mechanical rockers to both open and close valves, allowing engines to rev higher and more precisely. Honda tried Desmo and gave up. Other manufacturers dismissed it as unnecessarily complex. But Ducati stuck with it, decade after decade, refining the technology until it became a competitive advantage. By the 1990s, that advantage was paying dividends on the racetrack. In 1994, the Ducati 916 arrived. Designed by Massimo Tamburini, the 916 was not just a fast motorcycle. It was, and many enthusiasts still argue it remains, the most beautiful production motorcycle ever built. The underseat exhausts, the single-sided swing arm, those stacked headlights. Everything about the 916 communicated speed, even standing still. The design was so influential that motorcycle magazines have been voting it the greatest sport bike of all time for 3 decades running. But beauty does not keep factories open, sales do. And that is where another Ducati icon enters the story. In 1993, 1 year before the 916, Ducati released the Monster. The Monster was almost ridiculously simple. Take a sport bike engine, put it in a basic steel frame, strip away the fairings and the unnecessary complexity, add a round headlight and wide handlebars. Nobody at Ducati expected it to succeed. The company allocated minimal marketing budget, but the monster exploded. Within a few years, it accounted for 42% of all Ducati sales. The monster essentially invented the naked bike category that Japanese manufacturers would spend the next 2 decades trying to copy. Meanwhile, on the racetrack, Ducati was building a legend. Carl Fogarty, the British rider with the intense stare and the relentless aggression, won 4 World Superbike Championships on Ducatis between 1994 and 1999. Troy Bayliss added 3 more titles in the 2000s. And in 2007, Casey Stoner did what many thought impossible, winning the MotoGP World Championship on a Ducati, the only non-Japanese manufacturer to take the title in over a decade. Ducati had heritage. Ducati had racing success. Ducati had iconic products. What Ducati didn't have was stability. Between 1978 and 2012, Ducati changed hands 6 times. The Italian government sold it to a private group called VM. VM then sold it to Cagiva. Cagiva's financial troubles led to Texas Pacific Group taking over in 1996. TPG took Ducati public in 1999, made their money, and sold to Invest Industrial in 2005. Each ownership transition brought uncertainty. Each new owner promised to preserve Ducati's soul. Some succeeded better than others. Invest Industrial, to their credit, actually turned things around. Between 2006 and 2012, they grew Ducati's revenue from 305 million euros to 480 million euros. They launched 17 new motorcycle models. They pushed EBITDA from 27 million to 94 million euros. But Invest Industrial was always going to sell eventually. That's what private equity does. Buy, improve, exit. And in 2012, one man who had been waiting 27 years finally got his chance. Ferdinand Piëch was not a normal executive. The grandson of Ferdinand Porsche, Piëch had been obsessing over Ducati since at least 1985. He rode Ducatis personally. He understood their engineering philosophy. And when he became chairman of Volkswagen's supervisory board, he kept looking for opportunities to bring the Italian brand into the VW empire. In July 2012, that opportunity arrived. Audi AG, VW's premium brand, acquired 100% of Ducati Motor Holding for 747 million euros. The deal was structured through Automobili Lamborghini, Audi's Italian subsidiary, creating a convenient regional connection. Invest Industrial walked away with roughly triple their original investment. The motorcycle press was skeptical. Headlines warned of German bureaucracy crushing Italian passion. Enthusiasts worried that Ducati would become just another corporate brand, sanitized and soulless. Some predicted that within a decade, Ducatis would be built in Germany or outsourced to Asia. None of that happened. Instead, Audi made a decision that would prove crucial to everything that followed. They decided to leave Ducati alone. If you're enjoying this deep dive into Ducati's transformation, hit subscribe. We cover automotive and motorcycle business stories every week, and the next chapter of this story is where things get really interesting. When Audi executives arrived in Bologna after the acquisition, they made their intentions clear almost immediately. The philosophy they articulated was simple. Ducati must remain Ducati. Headquarters would stay in Bologna. Design would remain internal, handled by the Italian team that understood the brand's aesthetic DNA. Ducati Corse, the racing division, would continue operating independently. And critically, the CEO position went to someone who already bled red. Domenicali joined Ducati in 1991. By the time of the Audi acquisition, he had spent over 2 decades at the company, working his way up through product development and racing programs. In 2013, he became CEO. Domenicali understood something that outside executives might have missed. Ducati's value was not just in its factory or its patents, it was in the culture. The engineers who stayed late because they personally cared whether a motorcycle felt right. The designers who rejected proposals that met specifications but did not look beautiful. The test riders who would not sign off on a bike until it made them smile. Audi protected that culture, but they also brought something Ducati desperately needed: resources. German manufacturing expertise started flowing into the Borgo Panigale factory. The Audi production system, refined over decades of building premium cars, was adapted for motorcycle assembly. Quality control improved, defect rates dropped. But here is what made the partnership actually work. Ducati got to choose which German practices to adopt. Service intervals, for example. Old Ducatis required valve adjustments every few thousand miles, a maintenance ritual that enthusiasts tolerated but casual riders hated. Under Audi's quality systems, newer Ducatis extended those intervals to 15,000 miles or more. Electronics improved dramatically. Ducati gained access to automotive-grade suppliers for traction control systems, rider aids, and digital dashboards. The Bosch partnership that would later enable radar-equipped motorcycles came through Volkswagen Group connections. Purchasing power mattered too. When you are buying braking systems, you can negotiate better prices as part of Volkswagen's global supply chain than you can as a standalone Italian company producing 50,000 units a year. But Audi was also learning from Ducati. The partnership became genuinely bidirectional. Ducati's expertise in lightweight construction influenced Audi's sports car programs. The combustion engine knowledge that Ducati had accumulated through decades of high-revving V-twins found applications in Volkswagen Group's broader powertrain development. And then there were the collaborative special editions. In 2020, Ducati unveiled the Diavel Lamborghini. This was not some marketing exercise with a few badges slapped on. The bike featured actual Lamborghini design cues, forged wheels that echoed Huracan styling, and a paint color called Ghia Green that matched specific Lamborghini models. They made 630 of them. They sold immediately. The Street Fighter V4 Lamborghini followed, limited to 693 units, reflecting Lamborghini's founding year. It sold out within hours of being announced. These collaborations demonstrated something important. The Audi-Ducati relationship was not corporate integration. It was a creative partnership between two premium brands that happened to share an owner. By 2018, the skeptics had been largely silenced. That year, Ducati did something that redefined what a production superbike could be. They released the Panigale V4. For decades, Ducati had been synonymous with V-twin engines. The 916, the Monster, the Multistrada, every iconic Ducati used that L-twin configuration. The V4 represented a fundamental departure. The engine, called the Desmosedici Stradale, was literally derived from Ducati's MotoGP racing program. It displaced 1,103 cubic centimeters and produced 214 horsepower. The cylinder angle, the bore and stroke, the counter-rotating crankshaft, all of it came directly from the Desmosedici GP race bike. The Panigale V4 could hit 191 miles per hour. It could accelerate from 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds. And most importantly for Ducati's business, it captured 25% of the global superbike market. But the V4 platform was just the beginning. In 2020, Ducati unveiled the Street Fighter V4 at EICMA, the massive motorcycle show in Milan. They stripped the Panigale's fairings, added aggressive styling, and created something the press immediately loved. The Street Fighter won EICMA's Most Beautiful Bike Award with 36.7% of the vote, the highest margin in years. Then came the Multistrada V4 in 2021, and this is where Audi's resources really showed. The Multistrada V4 was the first production motorcycle in the world to feature both front and rear radar systems. The technology, developed with Bosch, enabled adaptive cruise control and blind spot monitoring, features that car drivers take for granted, finally arriving on two wheels. Building radar into a motorcycle is significantly harder than building it into a car. You cannot hide sensors behind plastic bumper covers. They have to work while the vehicle leans. They have to survive vibration and exposure. Solving those problems required the kind of engineering partnership that a standalone motorcycle company would struggle to develop. The Multistrada V4 became Ducati's best-selling model, with over 10,000 units delivered in 2023 alone. Let's talk about the racing. Ducati has always positioned itself as a racing company that sells street bikes. The connection between track and road isn't marketing, it's philosophy. And under Audi ownership, the racing program reached heights that even the Carl Fogarty era couldn't match. In MotoGP, Ducati endured a brutal 15-year drought after Casey Stoner's 2007 championship. Jorge Lorenzo couldn't make it work. Andrea Dovizioso came agonizingly close multiple times but never sealed the title. Then came Francesco Bagnaia. In 2022, Bagnaia won the MotoGP World Championship on a Ducati Desmosedici GP. In 2023, he won again. In 2024, Jorge Martin became the first satellite team rider to win a Premier Class championship, also on a Ducati. And in 2025, Marc Marquez, the most decorated rider of his generation, claimed his 7th MotoGP title, yes, also on a Ducati. 4 consecutive Riders' Championships, 6 consecutive Constructors' Championships from 2020 through 2025, the longest winning streak in MotoGP history. In 2023 alone, Ducati won 17 of 20 races. In 2024, 19 of 20. The dominance became so complete that other manufacturers started complaining about regulations. World Superbike tells a similar story. Alvaro Bautista won back-to-back World SBK Championships in 2022 and 2023. Ducati's total World SBK victory count now exceeds 400. Their podium count exceeds 1,000. They've claimed 21 manufacturers' championships in the series history, more than any other brand. But racing isn't just about trophies, it's about development. When Ducati engineers solve a problem for the MotoGP team on Sunday, that solution often appears in production motorcycles within 2 or 3 years. The V4 engine architecture came directly from racing. The electronic systems controlling traction and wheelie mitigation came from racing. Even small details, like the shape of the air intakes, flow from lessons learned at 200 miles per hour. This is why Ducati protects Ducati Corsa's independence so fiercely. The racing division isn't a marketing expense. It's the research and development laboratory. Now, about that near sale in 2017. The sale was closer than most people realize. I mentioned earlier that Dieselgate forced Volkswagen to consider selling Ducati, but I did not tell you the full story of how close it actually came. In September 2015, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency revealed that Volkswagen had installed software in diesel vehicles to cheat emissions tests. The scandal was catastrophic. Within weeks, Volkswagen's stock price collapsed by 40%. Criminal investigations launched across multiple countries. The chief executive officer resigned. The total cost would eventually exceed $33 billion in fines, settlements, and vehicle buybacks. And Volkswagen needed to find money quickly. By early 2016, rumors started circulating that non-core assets were on the chopping block. Ducati's name appeared on virtually every speculative list. In February 2017, Audi hired Evercore Partners, the investment bank, to formally explore a sale. What followed was one of the most heavily covered bidding processes in motorcycle history. Harley-Davidson saw an opportunity to acquire European credibility. Their brand was struggling with younger riders, and Ducati's sport bike expertise could have complemented their cruiser lineup. They submitted a bid worth approximately €1.5 billion through Goldman Sachs. Royal Enfield's parent company, Eicher Motors, came even closer to the asking price. Royal Enfield had ambitions beyond their classic-styled Indian-made bikes, and Ducati would have instantly elevated their technology. Bajaj Auto explored a bid. The Benetton family, with deep roots in Italian motorsport through their former Formula One team, expressed interest. Private equity firms including KKR, Bain Capital, Permira, and CVC all conducted due diligence. Most intriguingly, Invest Industrial, the private equity firm that had sold Ducati to Audi just 5 years earlier, came back with an offer to repurchase the company. But not everyone at Volkswagen wanted to sell. The Porsche Peach family, which controls the majority of Volkswagen's voting shares, had sentimental attachment to Ducati. So did the state of Lower Saxony, which holds a blocking minority stake in Volkswagen. And crucially, Volkswagen's Works Council, the employee representatives who sit on German supervisory boards, saw the sale as unnecessary. By the second half of 2017, Volkswagen's financial situation had stabilized faster than expected. In the first half of that year, operating profit jumped 19% to €8.9 billion. The urgent need for cash had faded. On December 14, 2017, the supervisory board met to make a final decision. And when the vote came, the Works Council sided with the family shareholders. Ducati was not for sale. The bidding war was over. And Ducati remained exactly where Ferdinand Piëch had wanted it all along. With the ownership question settled, Ducati accelerated. In 2022, the company crossed a threshold that few premium motorcycle manufacturers ever reach. For the first time in its 96-year history, Ducati exceeded €1 billion in annual revenue. The exact figure was €1.089 billion, up 24% from the previous year. Operating profit hit €109 million. Deliveries reached 61,562 motorcycles, another all-time record. The following year, 2023, was even more profitable. Revenue dipped slightly to €1.065 billion as deliveries moderated to 58,224 units. but operating profit actually increased to 112 million euros, with margins expanding to 10.5%. This is worth pausing on. Ducati deliberately chose to limit production in 2023 and 2024. They could have chased higher volume. They could have pushed more bikes into dealerships. But the strategy was explicit: profitability over volume, exclusivity over scale. CEO Claudio Domenicali explained the approach in interviews. Ducati prices premium. Ducati builds in limited quantities. Ducati maintains waiting lists. This protects resale values, which protects customer loyalty, which protects brand prestige. It is the same playbook that Ferrari uses, and Lamborghini and Porsche, all of which, not coincidentally, sit alongside Ducati in the Volkswagen Group portfolio. By 2024, Ducati's dealer network had grown to 821 locations across 96 countries. Revenue held above €1 billion, and the company was generating cash to fund its own investments without asking Audi for additional capital. That self-sufficiency matters. In 2022, Ducati opened a new finishing building at the Borgo Panigale factory. The expansion was self-financed, meaning Ducati's own profits paid for it, rather than requiring corporate approval from Wolfsburg. So why did Ducati succeed where other motorcycle acquisitions failed? Let's look at the counterexamples. MV Agusta, another legendary Italian brand, has changed ownership more than 6 times since 1991. Claudio Castiglione bought it, sold it to Proton, bought it back, sold it to Harley-Davidson, who promptly sold it back for €1 after losing money for 3 years. Mercedes-AMG took a stake, then got out. KTM acquired a majority position, and now KTM itself is in insolvency proceedings. The result? MV Agusta registered approximately 2,500 motorcycles in 2024. Ducati registered over 54,000. Buell, the innovative American sport bike company, was absorbed by Harley-Davidson in 1998. Eric Buell, the founder, lost control of engineering decisions. The bikes were forced into Harley's rigid dealer network, where salespeople did not understand them and customers could not find them. In October 2009, Harley shut Buell down entirely. The difference is not luck, it is philosophy. Audi understood that Ducati's value was intrinsic to its Italian identity. They preserved the culture that produced great motorcycles. They added resources without adding bureaucracy. They protected racing, they protected design, and they protected the intangibles that make enthusiasts care. And they hired a chief executive officer who had spent decades inside the company, rather than parachuting in an outsider who would treat the brand like a spreadsheet. As Ducati approaches its centennial in 2026, the future looks remarkably secure. At EICMA 2025, the company unveiled 8 new models and previewed 2 more. The product pipeline includes a new 890 cubic centimeters V2 engine platform with variable valve timing, extending service intervals to 45,000 kilometers, a 7th generation Panigale V4, and most surprisingly, the Desmo 450 MX, Ducati's first production motocross bike, with an enduro variant arriving summer 2026. The electric question looms, of course. Ducati supplies the specification bike for Moto E, the electric support series for MotoGP. The V21L prototype produces 147 horsepower from an 18 kilowatt-hour battery running at 800 volts. Top speed reaches 171 miles per hour. But Claudio Domenicali has been clear in interviews. Ducati sees electric as a laboratory, not an immediate production priority. The brand is also exploring synthetic fuels as an alternative path to carbon neutrality. For now, Ducati occupies a comfortable position within VW Group's brand group Progressive, alongside Audi, Bentley, Lamborghini, and Italdesign. It is the company of premium icons. So what can we actually learn from Ducati's transformation? 3 things stand out. First, autonomy with support beats integration. Audi did not try to turn Ducati into a German company. They provided resources and let Italians make Italian motorcycles. Second, leadership continuity matters. Claudio Domenicali has led Ducati for over a decade, having worked there for over 3 decades. That institutional knowledge cannot be replicated by hiring a consulting firm. Third, racing is not optional for performance brands. Every Ducati buyer knows that MotoGP riders trust the same platform they are purchasing. That credibility is worth more than any advertising campaign. Ferdinand Piëch waited 27 years to acquire Ducati. The Works Council fought to keep it when others wanted to sell. And today, a century after three brothers started building radio components in Bologna, Ducati is the most dominant force in motorcycle racing and a genuine billion-euro business. That is not an accident. That is what happens when an acquisition is done right. If you want to see how another legendary brand navigated corporate ownership, the video on screen covers that story next. And if you made it this far, you are clearly the kind of viewer who deserves more content like this. Hit subscribe and I will see you in the next one.